Evelyn's first mistake was buying the car in cash from a man who wouldn't look her in the eye. The sedan wasn't much to look at. Dull grey, dented, a little rust along the doors. It ran cheap, and she needed something reliable. The seller muttered a warning as he signed over the title. It doesn't like to be ignored. Then he walked away. At first, she thought it was just an old beater, and with a few quirks. The headlights flickered, the glove box wouldn't stay shut, and the radio never turned off. Just a steady hiss of static, no matter how hard she turned the knob. But soon, the car started showing a will of its own. The first time was a stoplight. She braked, but the sedan kept rolling forward, forcing her into the intersection. Horns blared as traffic screamed past. Evelyn jammed both feet on the brake, and at the last second, the car halted on its own, like it had decided when to stop. She told herself it was bad brakes, but the next night it happened again. This time the car jumped a red light, ignoring her frantic stomping on the pedal. A truck missed her by inches. When she finally coasted to the shoulder, she sat gripping the wheel, shaking as the radio crackled with faint laughter. Days turned into a blur of close calls. Sometimes the accelerator pressed harder under her foot, dragging her faster than she meant to go. Sometimes the wheel twitched sharply, steering her toward guardrails or into the path of oncoming cars. It was never enough to kill her outright, but just enough to make her feel the heat of a collision, the brush of death passing too close. And through it all, the radio whispered. At first, it was static, then faint words, a calm male voice, low and steady. Let me drive. Evelyn stopped sleeping. She stopped eating. She stopped going anywhere unless she absolutely had to. But each morning, the car waited for her, parked neatly outside her building, keys in the ignition, headlights angled toward her door. One night, after yet another near miss on the highway, Evelyn yanked the wheel into a gas station lot and fled. She left the car idling, doors wide open, and ran the rest of the way home. But when she got there, the lights in her apartment were already on, and sitting neatly on the kitchen table, her car keys. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't brought them. She had left them in the ignition. The next morning, the sedan was parked at the curb outside of her building, engine cold, doors unlocked, radio silent, waiting. She told herself she wouldn't touch it again, but later that week her phone buzzed with a text. No number, just 4 words. Time for a ride? That night, neighbors reported seeing a grey sedan tearing through the streets without headlights, swerving wildly, never stopping at intersections. Some swore there was no one behind the wheel, and others swore they saw a woman inside, screaming. The car hasn't been seen since, but every so often people claim they hear tires screeching late at night, followed by faint hiss of static drifting through the dark. They say Pukwudgies don't like to be seen. Small, grey-skinned tricksters with spines like porcupines and eyes that glow like dying embers. Some stories say they were once friends to humans, until jealousy turned them cruel. Now they haunt the edges of the forest, where the trees grow thick and the mist never lifts. Aaron didn't believe in any of that. He'd grown up in southern New England, hearing the tales from his grandmother, who called them the little men of the woods. But he was a rational man. Folklore didn't scare him. Bears did. Coyotes, ticks, not Pukwudgies. So, when he bought an old hunting cabin deep in the pines near Freetown State Forest, he thought the warnings were just local colour. He learned it differently the first week he stayed there. It began with footprints, small, human-shaped prints, barefoot, appearing in the forest just outside his porch each morning. He'd wake up to find them circling the house, never leading in, never leading out. Then came the noises. Soft giggles that echoed from the tree line after dark. Rocks clacking together in rhythmic patterns, like someone knocking just to see if he'd answer. One night, his generator shut off without warning, and he stepped outside with a flashlight and saw a figure crouched by the fuel tank, small, no taller than his hip, with coarse grey hair and long fingers tipped in black nails. It turned toward him. Its face was almost human, but wrong. Too smooth, too deliberate, like someone had carved the idea of a face from wet clay. Its mouth stretched into a sharp, unnatural grin. Aaron stumbled back, the flashlight flickered, and in that instant of darkness, the thing vanished. He locked every door, stuffed towels under the sills, and sat up until dawn with his rifle. When daylight came, he found the generator cover torn open and his flashlight lying on the porch, its batteries neatly removed. The local ranger he called the next morning didn't seem surprised. "You're near the old quarry, right?" he said. "You might want to leave an offering." Aaron laughed, thinking it was a joke, but that night he heard scratching at the windows. The same giggling, now closer, circling the house. His phone buzzed with no signal, the battery draining before his eyes. Then came the smell, sweet and metallic, like copper mixed with rotting leaves. He peered through the curtain and froze. There were 5 of them now, small, stooped, their eyes glowing a dim amber. They stood at the edge of the porch, whispering in a language he couldn't understand. One of them held his missing flashlight, another clutched a feathered charm, his grandmother's, which he kept by his bedside. Aaron didn't sleep that night. When dawn came, he packed his truck and drove until the trees thinned. In his rearview mirror, he thought he saw one of the creatures standing in the road behind him, hand raised in a mocking wave. He hasn't gone back since, but sometimes, when the nights are still, and the wind moves through the pines just right. He swears he can hear that same soft giggle on the edge of the forest. They say Pukwudgies don't like to be seen, but if you ever do see one, it's already too late. The year was 1907. The woods of northern Michigan were still wild then. Long stretches of pine and cedar where the fog hung low and the wind never stopped whispering. Somewhere between the old logging roads and the riverbank, a man named Caleb Holt stumbled through the underbrush, bleeding and breathless. He'd robbed a payroll train 2 days earlier, killed a man doing it. Now, the sheriff's posse was close behind. He could hear their dogs in the distance. By nightfall, the woods swallowed him whole. He pushed through the dark until he saw it. A crooked shack leaning in the pines, its windows glowing faintly from the last scraps of daylight. The place was draped in dream catchers. They hung from the eaves, the porch beams, the trees themselves. Hundreds of them. Some were new and tightly woven, others were rotted, their sinewed cords broken, feathers grey with age. They swayed gently in the wind, whispering as if speaking to one another. Caleb thought it was the strangest thing he'd ever seen, but it was a shelter, and the law wouldn't find him here. He pushed open the door. Inside, it was worse. Dream catchers everywhere, hanging from rafters, nailed to the walls, and stacked in the corners. Their threads quivered, even without wind, and the whole room smelled faintly of smoke and sage. He dropped his satchel of stolen bills on the table and lit a lantern. Dust floated like ghosts in the beam. As he turned to close the door, a voice behind him said, "Best not stay there long." Caleb spun, hand on his revolver. An old native man stood in the doorway, holding a bow across his shoulders. His expression was calm, unreadable, like he'd been expecting him. "Who are you?" Caleb barked. "Hunter," the man said simply. "This is not my house. It belongs to the dream catcher." Caleb frowned. "Looks like a heap of sticks to me." The man stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Long ago, a man stayed here too long. He laughed at the warnings, like you, and when the snow melted, they found him wandering by the river. His eyes were white as milk. He said something had crawled into his dreams, a spirit that made him see every bad thing he'd ever done, made him do things he didn't want to do. He clawed his own face to keep from sleeping." The old man's voice dropped lower. After that, he vanished. The house stayed. So did the spirit. These, he gestured to the hundreds of dream catchers, keep it from leaving. Caleb smirked. "Appreciate the bedtime story, old-timer, but I'll take my chances." The hunter sighed and turned to go. "Then I'll say this. When you hear it whisper your name, don't answer." Caleb watched him disappear into the trees. That night, he bolted the door and threw another log on the fire. He tried not to look at the dream catchers, but it was impossible. No matter where he turned, one seemed to hang just at the edge of his vision. Their webs pulsed faintly in the firelight, like veins under the skin. As the hours crawled by, sleep finally took him, and then the whispering began. At first it was soft, just like the wind through the trees, but soon he could hear words carried on the flicker of the flames, a low voice calling his name over and over. Caleb. He jolted awake. The fire was nearly out. The dream catchers swayed through the air, although it was still. Caleb, why did you do it? He grabbed his gun, eyes darting around the room. The voice came from everywhere, from inside the walls, from inside his head. You took what wasn't yours. You spilled blood for it. Now we share the same dream. His breath came in short grasps. He fired a shot into the ceiling. The sound exploded through the cabin, and every dream catcher trembled at once. Something unseen moved through them. The webs stretched and shimmered, their threads twisting like living things. One by one, the feathers turned black, the beads glowing faintly red, like tiny eyes opening in the dark. The next morning, when the posse finally tracked his trail, they found his campfire still warm. The shack stood silent, its door hanging open. There was no sign of Caleb Holt. Only his revolver lay on the floor. It rusted overnight, and in the center of the floor, a new dream catcher, freshly woven. Its web glistened as if wet, a single dark feather hanging from the center. When the sheriff touched it, he swore he heard a faint whisper from somewhere deep inside, a man's voice still calling his own name.